judo, strength and conditioning, how do you see it? How do you see it? And what are most important exercises? Hold on, let me read the whole thing. Yeah, so what are the most important exercises for judo? Okay, so I've been working with Angelica Delgado for about 6 months now, and we've been running my condensed conjugate model. And what I can say from an overall strength perspective, working on things that increase her posterior chain strength, her strength from the oblique sling, anterior and posterior, lateral sling is important. And then also her pressing power from a floor press position and close grip bench. Because of the fact that she's pushing and pulling, and then she also needs to have good rotation of the hips, and she also has to have good flexion and extension of the hips. So if you're working through that entire chain of command, like there's a lot of different things that you need to work on, right? But I've noticed that working through that condensed conjugate model, we're actually working on absolute strength and we're working on dynamic work. So speed is going to be key. Now you can use this with trap bar deadlifts are very good. We also use sumo deadlifts for the hips. We used a floor press, obviously, close grip bench press again. I also used a landmine squat to press. I've used windshield wipers, heavy windshield wipers with the landmine for that rotational strength in that oblique sling, that anterior oblique sling. I've also used a variation of a pendulé, or not a pendulé row, but an anti-rotation on the GHR. Basically what you would do is I would take the band and she would hold the band up, press it out, right, hold for a second, and then come back in as she's laying supine, right, off of the GHR.
Like a back extension, anti-rotation.
Yeah, so you would call it kind of like a Pallof press variation, where she's actually pushing it up and then she's getting it away from the center of mass and then pulling it back in. But that's increasing contractibility of the transverse abdominals, obliques, anterior serratus, right? So she's getting that too, and that's going to increase force production through those muscles that we're activating. We do a lot of different variations on the Pallof, and then from a power perspective, right, we work through a ton of ballistics and plyometrics. With the plyometrics, we're doing bounds and jumps in the lateral and linear fashion. So where the force displacement is coming from, depending upon where she's actually going to be moving. Now, her throws are more flexion based. So she does things like uchimatas and other base forms of throws, to where it requires her to use her abs and her hip flexors and psoas complex. So from a ballistic standpoint, we utilize those med ball slams and a rotational slam. We'll utilize jump slams. And then from a jump perspective, a plyometric, we use broad jumps or bounding broad jumps, or even doing some depth drop to broad jump in that fashion too as well. As far as from a hip extension standpoint, we'll do ballistics with an underhand med ball